This is the third part of the videos where we are discussing about how to create modular inputs in Splunk using Python SDK. In previous video, we talked about how we can create that input UI using this method. So if I just show you using this gets_scheme method. Now today we will be developing this method stream_events, which will be basically streaming the data to Splunk so that the data will be getting indexed into Splunk to a particular index. Now we will follow the similar approach which we did previously for the TMDB scripted input. Maybe I'll be giving that video link somewhere over here so you can see it once. So let us try to develop the modular input in similar fashion. So for that, what we'll be doing it, we will be first define some methods so that we can use the Python request module to basically call that API. So we need to import it. Now while importing the requests module, you need to be very careful over here. So we actually change this path over here. So before that only you need to import the request module. Okay, import requests as RDQ. We'll just give it a name. And also we need another package called JSON as well. So with these two, let us develop our first method. So I will be adding this method, the new method which we will be developing today, in the same class so that our code is modularized in that sense. So let's develop the first method, which will be basically calling that TMDB API, or it can basically use to call any API with the get method. So I will give it a name, similar name, TMDB API call, which we used previously in the scripted input so that we can refer it. Now as we are defining this method inside this particular class, so the first argument has to be self. The second argument is the request URL, correct? So request, so we will be having some URL which we will be hitting it with our API key so that it will give us some results. That's the how basic API stuff works. And we will be passing some parameters. Parameters. Okay, so now maybe if we just see it from the TMDB website, it will make more sense. So if I just go to the TMDB API documentation, so this is the endpoint we are using, upcoming movies. And if you just go to the try it out tab over here, so you can pass your API key and then you can pass other stuff as well, which are optional, like the language, page number and region. Now these are called the parameters. Okay, this API key, language, page and region, these are all the parameters, and this is the URL basically. So if I just see the URL, so this is the URL we are using it in our code. So let's go back to our code. So that's why we have two inputs for our TMDB API call. And what it will do, it basically call this one. So we will be using Python request modules. That means REQ dot. So there is a method called get, using that get method only, because if I just go back again, so this is nothing but a get request, correct? So that is why we are using request.get over here. Now inside that get, we will be passing two stuff. In that URL, we will be passing our request URL, and in the params, there is a input called params. We will be passing our parameters, correct? We'll see what value we will be putting it for these two guys. Now we'll also check if similar way, if our response dot status code, okay, if it is not equals to 200, then maybe we will just exit sys dot exit. Okay, we'll just say exit code as 1. And if we are getting response properly, that means if we are getting 200, that means successful HTTP request, HTTP response, then we will take that response dot and we will convert it to JSON. Okay, so we will be converting this response to JSON, because if you see the output we are getting from the TMDB, it's a JSON structure. And if you see it thoroughly, it has 4 elements: dates, page number, results, and at the bottom portion of it, I think we have total pages and total results as well. Now we are mainly interested in this results part, because it is a array of events, basically array of movies over here. So that means each and every movie will be a separate event for us. Okay, so that means somehow we need to parse this particular array and JSON list basically, and then index these movies one by one as a separate event in our Splunk. Let's go back to our code. So we got our data, and this will also, we need to return the data. So this is our TMDB API call method. Now we need another method which will basically work with all those language, page numbers, API key to send a request to this guy. So we can define another method, similar stuff which we did in our TMDB scripted input as well, but here we will be giving it a name called, let's say, get upcoming movies. Get upcoming movies. Now similar stuff which we need to pass self as a first argument. Then we need to have these 4 inputs we have created in the UI. These 4 guys, right? API key, language, page number, and region as our input to this particular modular input, correct? So that we need to pass it over here, so that we can create this parameter object and call this particular method to get some data. So we will be having, that's why, 4 inputs: API key, API underscore key, then we will be having page number, and then we'll be having language, and then we'll be having region, correct? So now with this method, the first thing we will be doing is, similar way in the TMDB scripted input, we created a request URL, right? So that one I'll be copying it. We'll be basically creating this particular variable over here. So this will be our request URL, which is same as whatever we have, we saw it over here, the same stuff. Then we have the request URL. Then we need to construct the parameter object. Let's do that one. Let's give it a name called parameters. This needs to be a dictionary structure, so that's why this 2 curly brackets. Now we have 4 things: API key, page number, language, and region. Now what will be the key names? That name has to match with whatever they are providing in the query string. So this you need to make sure. So I'll just copy the API underscore key. So first key will be API key, and this API key, the value of this API key will be whatever we are passing to this particular method, correct? Now the second is the page number. So if I just go back, so they have a page, correct? So we need to give the same name, page number, and here we need to pass the same page number we are passing to our method. Similarly, for language, we need to do the same stuff, language, and then we need to pass the input we are having it here. Similarly for region as well. So let me copy this one. So this is our parameters object we have created. So this request URL and parameters will be passing to this method to get the data. So we can write something like this one directly. Return, we will be calling this method. Okay, now we do not need to pass self. In the request URL we are passing this guy. In the parameters we are passing this guy. So this will basically, if the request is successful, this will give me a JSON object in the form of this data, and then we can work with this particular JSON object and index the data into Splunk. So with these two methods, I think we are in a position to develop this stream events method now. Now before we move on, let's take a look at the stream_events documentation. That will be more useful. Now if you see it over here, stream_events, it takes two arguments, inputs and EW. Input means an input definition object. That means whatever we have defined in our UI. So if I just go back, go to settings and data inputs, and for our TMDB modular input, so when we try to create a new input, we need to provide this informations, this API key, language, page number and region. So this is the input definition, and we can create multiple inputs stanzas in our file, right? Because once you save it, it will allow you to create another new input. So for each and every stanza, those details are called actually those key value pairs are actually called the input definition. So that is stored. So there should be an input definition class which will be storing those kind of details, and it takes another argument called EW, which is nothing but an event writer in Splunk. So we will be using this EW to write the event to Splunk so that it can index it, and to get whatever we have defined through UI into our code, which we will be using this input definition object. So if I just go back to this input definition class documentation, so it basically encodes the XML defining inputs the Splunk passes to this modular input. Now there is not much information here, but one thing is needed. So let me show you that one. Now if I just go to our TMDB modular input app, if you remember from the video 1, we have created this lib directory. Inside that lib directory we pasted that Splunk lib directory, and if you see in our code, at the first we imported splunklib.modular input. We have imported everything. That means in the Splunk lib directory there is a directory called modular input, and we have basically imported all these modules there, and one of it is input_definition. So let's take a look what it is. So if I just open it now, if you see it is a very small code base. So this is the input definition class, and it has a method called parts. If you are giving any XML formatted, because everything is behind the scene, it is XML as we discussed in the video 1. So this parse method can parse that XML definition to this input class. Now one thing to notice over here is it also has a inputs dictionary. So this is useful because whatever we are defining in the UI, it is stored as this guy as inputs dictionary behind the scene. So that means in our code, when we will be trying to access these details, we need to use this inputs dictionary. So this is how we will be doing it. So if I just go back to our stream events now, so I'll be writing something like this one. So to get the details of all the inputs, that means for a particular stanza all the details. So this is how, so this is our inputs class, correct? So let us copy that one. So let us write it. inputs. So this is our input class. Now inside this input class, as I show you in the code, so there is a inputs dictionary. So inputs, so that will be stored. This will basically store all the details. Now if we just write because in the dictionary, if we just write the items, items, if you just call this particular method, it will basically give you the key value, stanza name, and all this stuff. So if you have multiple inputs, so it basically in this particular dictionary will have the key name as the input stanza name, and then each and every stanza there will be a input definition, right? The region, the page number, the API key. So those details will be saved as another dictionary. If I just show it to you, so it will be something like this one. So we will be having, let's create a comment. So we will be having something like a dictionary which has a key called input stanza, and the value of this one will be another dictionary where we'll be having, let's say, API key, the value of the API key value, so whatever we are saving it from the UI. Okay, similar stuff for language as well, whatever we are providing it from the UI, so that will be saved like this. So this is how. And if you are defining multiple input stanza, so similar, so this structure will be repeated. This is input stanza. If I just name it input stanza 1, and this is input stanza 2, something like this one. So that's why if we just take this guy, so this will give you all the input stanza and their corresponding details. Now if we just wanted to loop it through, it is very similar, right? So let's say for each and every key, I'll just name it as input underscore name, comma, and input details, I will just name it as input underscore item. Okay, so for this one in this one, so that means we are basically trying to loop through all these keys of this dictionary and get the data. Now how for a particular input, when you are looping through for a particular input, how you will get the API key, this is how we will be getting it. So input item basically represents this guy, correct? So that means we can directly write API underscore key will be our input item, then there will be a key called API key. Now if you remember in the previous video when we talked about this get scheme method, I said for each and every input parameter we have given a name in the argument class, correct? Like the API key, lang, page number, and I said the same name we need to use when we will be accessing this particular value programmatically. So this is how it will be stored in that dictionary as well. That's the reason I have said that. So that means in the dictionary it will be API underscore key. So Control V. Similarly for language, page number, region also we need to do the similar stuff. But remember one thing, in the get scheme method, we mentioned the API key is only required argument. Rest of the stuffs are all optional argument. That means if we are not providing the value of that particular argument, we need to basically go with some default value, and that default value could be, if I just go to TMDB API, for the language it is ENUS, for the page number it is the first page, even region you can always leave it as blank, that you can do it. So we will be doing the similar stuff. So we will check first whether we have provided the language, the page number or region there or not. This is how we will be checking it. we'll say if lang, that means the, so if I would have provided the language, so it would have created a key called lang in this particular in a dictionary there. So if lang in this input item, so this is how we check whether a particular key exists in a dictionary or not in Python. So if it is there, then I will create a variable called, let's say, lang, and I will take that value of this guy. So similar way, so if it is not present, I will provide some value, let's say lang equals to, so similar value, okay, enus. Similarly, for page number and region also we will be doing the same stuff. So I'll just copy this code snippet. Now we will first check whether this page number exists or not. If it is exist, then I will take that value. Otherwise, I will create a variable called page number, and the value I will provide is 1. Similarly, for region also, I will do the same stuff. If region is present, take that value. Otherwise, keep it as a blank value by default. Then we will just provide, we will just call this upcoming movies, which will give us the movie details, whole set. Okay, so we will call this guy, and we will take that result in a variable called result. Now when we'll be calling this method, we need to call in something like this one, because this is inside our class. We do not need to provide self. In the API key, we are passing this API key, we are getting it from the input. In the page number, we are passing this page number, we are getting it. Okay, so this is 1. And in the language, we are passing the language, and in the region, we are passing this region. So we need to make it as region. And another thing I did mistake over here is we need this needs to be a page number. Now the result, whatever we are getting it over here, it will be a full set, because the API is providing this full set. Now from this, we need to take this results, whatever we have for this particular key, whatever values, because this is, we are interested in indexing the movies only, and then somehow we need to break this one, basically loop it through, and then create single events here. So this is how we will be doing it. So we will be looping it through. So that means for r in result, and as we are interested only in the results key, so I will just copy this one. Okay, so please don't get confused on this result and result. So this result is actually returned by the API. So now the main interesting part, how we create events using this Python SDK. If I just go back to the documentation again, it will make more sense. So there is a class called event. If you see it here, event. Okay, so now this class has a lot of parameters like the data, the stanza name, the time, host, index name, source type, everything you can pass it over here. The main thing is the data which get indexed into Splunk. You need to provide the stanza name as well, for which input stanza this particular event is attached to. So these two are main important stuff. Otherwise you can provide the time, host, other details here as well. So let's make it as very simple. So as we will be using this particular class, if you see it, we need to first create an object of this class. So this is how we will be doing it. Let's say we create a variable called event with the object which basically represents the int object of this class. Then first we will set the stanza name, and this will be nothing but the input stanza name, which we are getting it in the input name as we are looping it through, right? So this is our input stanza name, and as I said, the main important stuff is the event.data. So this data, what needs to be? It needs to be this R. Now this R is a dictionary format because we are looping it through all the elements of this particular results JSON. But when we will be streaming into Splunk, we need to stream it into a text format. So that's why we need this json.dumps, okay, which converts this dictionary to a string. So json.dumps R. So this is done, and then once our event.data is ready, then we can just stream this particular event using this EW. So this EW is a event writer. So let's go back to the documentation. So there should be a class called event writer over here. If you see it, so it has a method called write event, which takes an event class object, which we have already created. So we can write something like this one. So this is our EW, which Splunk is already providing to us as the input of this stream event method. And then we will be calling this write_event method, correct? And we need to pass a event class object, which we have constructed it here with this stanza and this data. Now if you see it, it is complaining about this one undefined variable. Okay, this is the class defined inside this class itself. This is a method, so we need to call it something like this one, self.tmdb API call, just like we did it for this guy. I think we have completed our code. So if we have done everything correctly, the event should get indexed into Splunk. So let us see that. We will be going into this settings, data inputs, as we have created our modular input. So it will show up something like this one, tmdb modular input. We'll be creating a new modular input. So as I said, by default it asks for a name. So let's give tmdb demo. Okay, API key, I will be copying it from my tmdb_upcoming.py script. So I will give that one. Language, let's not give it. Page number, let's say give it 1. Region, let's not give it. Now if I just click on more settings, here you can give the interval. I am not giving it now. I'll just try to run once and see how it's going. Here you can set the source type as well. If you remember, for the tmdb scripted input, we selected the source type as _JSON, so which we'll be doing it. Now if you have your own source type, you can select it from here as well. And regarding the host index, I'll choose main. Now I'll be clicking on next, and let's click on the start searching. So if everything goes fine, our main index should be having the similar kind of movie details which we saw using the tmdb scripted input. And if you see it, it is already indexing it. So this is how we can stream event into Splunk using this stream_events method of that scripted input, basically the Python SDK. And if you see, like in terms of code, this is very simplistic code. Because if you want to create modular input in a very normal way, that means you need to create those scheme object as XML files and everything as XML object basically, and you need to parse it as well. So there are a lot of coding hassles are removed when you use Python SDK to create modular inputs. Maybe in future videos we will see how to create modular inputs without the Python SDK as well, but I think this is the most sophisticated way of creating modular inputs in Splunk. So hopefully this video was helpful. See you in next video.